I'm going to get started so that we can get as much in as we possibly can. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Edinburgh North and Leith hustings organised by the local Common Weal group here in the area C Coffeehouse, which is very lovely. I have a few sort of housekeeping type things. Firstly, thank you for coming out this evening and for finding us online. And I saw that someone found us thanks to Meet Your Next MP, which I would recommend as somewhere to go and look for hustings events. Also, you can find us online right now, thanks to Democracy TV, who are live streaming. If you're tweeting, we've got a hashtag, EN hustings, and the local Common Weal group are at CW_ENL. There we go. My name is Juliet Swann, and I work for the Electoral Reform Society in Scotland, and I'm your chair for the evening. At ERS Scotland, we campaign for a better democracy, and much of our campaigning centres on the ideas that came out of our citizen-led Democracy Max inquiry into what a good Scottish democracy looks like. I mention this, A, as a wee promotional message, B, because we believe that citizens are centre to how we think about our democracy, and C, because one of the findings from that inquiry is that people would prefer politics to be more collaborative and less confrontational. So I see my role this evening to ensure that we all treat each other with respect, we listen to each other, and we remain civil despite any disagreements. I feel a little bit like a school teacher now. I should also add one of my favourite findings from Iain Eichhorn's wonderful research into how 16 and 17-year-olds engage with the referendum that I think we could all learn from. They asked questions with a view to receiving an actual answer. And they were disappointed when greeted with sound bites. They are also thought about the answers and often use them to inform and sometimes change their minds as to what they were going to do next. So, I know, it's like that gets beaten out of them, eh? So in that spirit of openness and collaboration, I'm going to invite us all to participate enthusiastically, but with politeness and respect for each other's opinions, and indeed the choice to change that opinion. So this evening we're joined by six of your Edinburgh North and Leith candidates. I wondered why my numbers were 2 down. And by Pramod Subbaraman. Yeah? I'm really bad at people used to mispronounce my surname, my old surname, so I'm quite sort of conscious of that. Anyway, who has stood in from Edinburgh South for your Liberal Democrat candidate, who is Martin Veart. Your other candidates are Iain McGill for the Conservative Party, Sarah Beattie-Smith for the Scottish Greens, your sitting MP, Mark Lazarowicz for Labour, Alan Melville for UKIP, Deidre Brock for the SNP, and Bruce Whitehead for Left Unity. They will each have 3 minutes for an opening statement before we go to a Q&A from y'all, which I will try and theme a wee bit just so that we can sort of get to the nub of the issue a bit if we can. We'll have a wee break at about 8:30 and then reconvene before finishing with a closing statement from each of the candidates in order that we can wrap up at 9:30, so that'll probably start at about 9:15. So, the candidates drew lots to see who would go first with their 3-minute statement, and the winner was Pramod. So, I invite you to take the microphone and share your thoughts. I am going to be quite strict with time as well, so if anybody starts going over, or if you are lengthy in your questions or answers, I am going to be very strict.
Are we ready?
Yeah, go.
Right, it is weird. Is this working?
Yep. You can stand up.
Okay.
Go for it.
Right,
hey.
Sorry. But excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough today. It is weird that I drew the first one, considering that I'm the one chap here who's not standing in this seat. But I hope this is a sign of things to come for Martin on counting day. Anyways, here we are. I'm first going to introduce pretty much what Martin has given me because, well, it's supposed to be his hustings anyway. Martin Veart was born in East Anglia and gained a degree in geology from the University of Wales, Aberystwyth. From the year 2000, Martin has lived in Scotland, first in Aberdeen, and since 2008, here in Leith with his family. Martin has been a member of the Liberal Democrats since 1989. And now I'm going to read a statement that he's given me today. Sometimes, as a Liberal Democrat, it is easy to feel that the entire world is against us, even the job. Although I was due to be back by this time, I am sorry to say that the cost cutting that is globally taking place in the oil and gas industry has meant that my employer's client is saving money on personnel, leaving me literally stuck in the middle of the Persian Gulf. So apologies for not being here. I sincerely regret not being with you this evening. It is certain that Pramod, who has kindly stepped in for me this evening to put the case for the Liberal Democrats, will do an excellent job, so I do not feel tonight's audience will be shortchanged in this regard. I have been told, however, you may want to know a little bit about me, and why I am qualified to be your Member of Parliament. First of all, the basics. I live in the constituency with my family, and our child goes to Trinity Academy. I work in the constituency, at least when not gallivanting off to distant parts of the world, with a local company that specializes in oil field-related software. Last year, I was made redundant from my previous post as a geophysical engineer. It has to be said that it is the travel, both with my new and in previous employment, that gives a person a good perspective on the world. During the past 20 or so years, I have at first hand seen many of the places that have regularly come up in the news. Russia, Israel, North Africa, the Middle East, and of course, Europe. Closer to home, I have lived in other parts of the UK, Ireland, and Norway. These last experiences in particular informed my opinion in the recent independence referendum. The advantages of living in a small nation do not outweigh the advantages of being part of a bigger union. It is with the same logic, I think, being part of the European Union is both good for Scotland and for the United Kingdom as a whole. Such an outlook is common with some of the other parties represented here tonight. What makes me a liberal is a basic core belief that the state exists not to gather data on us or wield power over us or to ask us to sacrifice in pursuit of dreams. The state exists to serve us, the citizens. It is there to enable those who are able to succeed to do so and to be there for those through age or sickness, lack of education or opportunity who need help. In return, we all can and should contribute, with the weight falling on those with the broadest shoulders first, whether they are individuals or corporations. Pramod, I am sure, will describe this evening how these principles are both being delivered now as part of the Liberal Democrat policies in government and will be continued to be delivered in the future, but only if you vote Liberal Democrat. Clearly, he has set very high expectations.
Thank you very much. Who was number two?
Yeah, can I speak?
Yes, you can, although don't
This is to save
watch
papers.
while I fall off the...
Oh, good, I get to... Ready? I've lived in Edinburgh on and off all my life. I studied engineering at Napier, went to London to work for Shell, but couldn't stomach it. So instead I went protesting in Trafalgar Square against the oil wars. I then became a journalist at ITN and reported on what Shell had been up to in Nigeria, polluting the Niger Delta and calling in murderous police to suppress peaceful protest. I returned to Edinburgh about 10 years ago, wrote about the environment and campaigned for transport charities. I also travelled twice to Gaza with humanitarian aid, once with a group of Muslim activists and once with a group of Jewish activists for peace. After starting a family, I now want to see what I can do to help with the problems we all face. We're all aware of the squeeze on services like council playgroups, the cutbacks in library hours, the tightening of social care budgets and the sacking of staff. Our SNP government claims austerity has nothing to do with them, but they still pass on the cuts imposed by London. Why don't they stop using contractors who pay under the living wage of £10 an hour? That would be a start. As for the UK parties, Labour's wars made the world infinitely more dangerous. They had 13 years in power, and still 500,000 Scots are living in poverty, including 100,000 children. When Nick Clegg announced that the Lib Dems couldn't support free tuition fees after all, instead of resigning, he kept the worst right-wing government in memory in power for 5 years. The Tories pay incentives to privately owned benefits agencies to impose sanctions, forcing people into food banks. Zero-hours contracts give people no security and falsely boost employment figures. But Ed Ball said on Budget Day that he wouldn't change anything about the Chancellor's vicious £12 billion of spending cuts. Who else is there? Well, the Greens are nice, they love the planet, and they rightly want to protect it. But in Germany, they backed the bombing of Serbia. And in the the Greens in an Irish coalition government dropped their opposition to rendition flights and then implemented austerity along with Fianna Fáil. Plus, they've imposed cuts on their own, like in Brighton, where the Green Council cut the wages of refuse staff, sparking a strike and turning a beautiful seaside town into a tip. My party, Left Unity, was formed 2 years ago as a new party of the left. We want rent controls to protect folk against greedy landlords. We say more council homes should be built and the right to buy removed. We want an end to the scapegoating of migrants who are not the cause of our economic problems. On the environment, we would start by dealing with capitalism and its wasteful ways, tackling the environmental damage through a shift away from fossil fuels, greater efficiency and less waste, more sustainable transport and industry. I urge you to give real socialism in Left Unity a chance. That's what the Greek people did in January, and that's what the Spanish voters may do in a few weeks. Given the chance, Syriza and Podemos have proved that European people, given the chance, will vote for progressive socialism, and that wave of optimism is now washing on these shores. Thank you.
Okay, you were 30 seconds over. Who's third? I may punish you. I may not.
Heck. Right, is the timer going?
Go.
Oh, right. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Deirdre. I'm the SNP candidate for Northern Leith, and it's great to see you all here today, but I'm not going to really talk about myself. I'm going to talk about some of the things that have been happening and the things I hope are going to happen. So last year, we debated the biggest question, our constitutional future, and the people of Scotland did it with passion, intelligence, and, for the most part, good grace. People took control of politics then, and we can't go back. There will be no more business as usual in Scotland. Voters will no longer be taken for granted. Scottish politics has changed. We've taken our democracy back. So as we face a choice between the austerity and crippling cuts agreed between Labour and the Tories, or setting a different course, let's not pretend that this is just another election. Scotland's voice will be heard after this election. The SNP will make sure of that. We'll make sure that those new powers come to Edinburgh, and will make a difference to the way the UK is run in the meantime. Now, Nicola Sturgeon has laid out some of our goals already. A modest increase in public spending that will put people back to work and protect public services, no new nuclear weapons, and protection of our NHS from the effects of TTIP, for starters. Because we have a different view of society from the current UK government. In his budget speech, George Osborne said the standard of living has gone up since 2010. Well, tell that to the people in the queues for the food banks. And Labour is proposing nothing that would reverse the evil that drives people there. Now, I don't doubt that Mark is a decent human being, and he tries his best, but he is in the Labour Party, which stood with the Tories in the referendum, has pledged to keep cutting public spending, and doesn't care about squeezing the poorest in society. He's on the wrong side of the argument. I mean, for that matter, Iain's not a bad bloke either. I've no idea really why either of them want to be associated with either Cameron or Miliband and their policies. You know, we have the opportunity to make Scotland a better place here and improve the UK at the same time. We have the chance this time to change the focus of politics in the UK while we stake our claim to Scotland's future. Politics shouldn't be about the economy and how best to serve it. Politics should be about how the economy can serve the people. Finding and implementing the right policies to improve lives has to be what politicians do. No more will the weak, the poor, the dispossessed be on the outside looking in. Instead, they'll be on the inside, right at the very centre, making the system work for them. Well, that's our mission over the next few weeks. Make politics about the people. And that means electing MPs who'll put Scotland and the people who live here's interests first and foremost, and who will really work for that change. So that means, quite simply, a vote for the SNP. Thank you.
Okay, that was only 6 seconds over, so Very good. So far, you win the prize. Who was fourth? Iain. Do you want to do it from there or here? It's up to you. Just don't. No.
Okay. You're looking strict. You're looking strict. Yeah, I'm Iain McGill. I'm the Conservative candidate for this area, as I was last time. Mark got lucky victory, and I'm looking to right that wrong. It is so. I'm from round here. 25 years ago, I was at Drummond School at the top of the street there. I didn't do very well. I ended up 20 years ago as a postman round in Brunswick Road. I joined just as we moved up from Kirk Street to Brunswick Road there, and I delivered every tenement as a postman in Leith. And now I've delivered every tenement as a Tory candidate in Leith. At least the Royal Mail paid. We had a better union. It is. Then I went away. I was overseas doing international aid and development for a few years. Came back, and 15 years ago I was working at Pilrig Park School across the road for working with children with additional support needs. 14 years ago I was working in a food bank across the road, running night shelters for the homeless. And for the last 10 years I've been running my own business. We run an office on Albert Street, working with support workers, care staff, providing staff to charities and housing associations at short notice. So that's a bit of where I'm at. You can see where some of my priorities in life would be running through that. So why am I a Conservative? There's a whole bunch of reasons, okay? And there is. I'm a very typical Conservative because I don't, I see very much when I was growing up, the big battle that was going on was ideological battles between left and right. The Cold War was going on and walls were coming down across Europe. People were being liberated and freed, and it was very much the right were the good guys and the left were building walls whilst the right were taking walls down. And I'm much more of an internationalist and much more about taking walls down rather than putting up walls, bringing barriers down rather than putting up barriers, and much more about saying I'm not going to be pigeonholed and I'm not going to be stuck in a place where a state thinks I should be failing school off to a job for the next 40 years. No, I was much more looking, saying, there's Thatcher and Reagan absolutely liberating tens of millions of people across the world, and that did influence me as a youngster. It absolutely did. But then I looked again, looking round at folks like Thatcher and Major. I liked my favourite election poster was a picture of John Major looking very grey, looking very John Major-like. It says, what do the Conservatives offer a working class boy from Brixton? They made him Prime Minister. Do you know, there were no barriers there, whether it was Thatcher becoming Prime Minister as a woman in the 70s, which was still the only Prime Minister we've had who was a woman, or John Major, a working class boy from Brixton. It was very much the Conservatives offering those opportunities. And what am I proud of in this coalition government that we've had? Very, very proud of. We signed into legislation 0.7% of our budget going across to international aid and development, absolutely dealing with poverty overseas as well as poverty here, which we have done. Things like the tax allowance, so raising the tax allowance up to £12,500 so that work pays, putting a triple lock on the pensions so pensioners aren't left behind, and absolutely pushing hard and trying to get ways to bring folks out of fuel poverty, which may well involve the unconventional gas that we have underneath us at the moment. So proud of lots of things, and I'm Iain, the Conservative.
Thank you, Iain. You were 20 seconds over.
I wanted to be in trouble.
I'll see you after school. Okay, who's next? Mark.
Good evening, everyone.
Do you want to grab the mic just so we can be sure everyone hears you?
Come along this evening. I'm Mark Lazarowicz. I'm the Labour candidate for the elections. I first moved to Edinburgh just about 35 years ago, and in fact I stayed in Leith at the time. I've moved to various parts of the city since then, but I've been in this area for around 25 years and involved in local politics, and I've been the Member of Parliament for Edinburgh North Leith since 2001. I believe that the issue of this election is about changing the direction of the country and changing the direction of economic policies, and also changing politics as well, much more dramatically. I agree with what people have said about what's happened over the last 5 years. The very statistic that we had one food bank in Scotland in 2010, and we've now got 44, indicates the way that things have changed for the worse for so many people in this country. And one of the things I see at my surgeries every week is the inhumane benefit sanctions regime, which is causing real difficulty to so many people. And that's just one example of how things need to change. And can I emphasise that there is a fundamental difference between the economic strategy of the Labour Party and that of the Conservative Party, no matter what one or two people have said tonight. We do not accept that those who are hardest off should bear the brunt of the mess that the bankers and the economic system caused 6 years ago. We believe we were right to borrow money to stop the system collapsing and to ensure that we did revive the economy to a certain degree. And so in that sense, yes, we do believe we have to balance the books in the long term, but we don't think that needs to be done in the way the Conservatives did it, and we want to do that by, for example, bringing back the 50p tax rate. We'll have a tax on bankers' bonuses, and we'll make sure we end things like exploitative zero contracts, put up the minimum wage, go for living wage, and things like that which would make a real difference to people. So there's a fundamental difference between our approach and that of Conservatives. But we never kind of change as well. We need a change in the way our country as well. We need to get rid of the House of Lords. We need to get rid of in the big money in politics, end lobbying, end the way in which people can influence politics because of the money they've got from outside interests. All that must end. We must see the implementation of the more devolution of the Scottish Parliament, which I support, and we will go further as Labour and the proposals that came out of the Smith Commission. That's something which I think we want to do. And personally, I'd like to see us moving eventually towards a federal UK, because I actually want to see the UK survive, but I believe by moving towards a more fundamental change, we're actually more likely to make that happen, and also make it more acceptable to people in Scotland as well. We need to see changes internationally as well. I support staying in the European Union, but I also believe we need to see a change in the austerity policies which too many European governments have supported. I want to see us seeing a fairer world, the changes made to international development assistance, which we're all party, which Iain McGill mentioned, I support, but there's much more wrong with the international system as well, which needs to be changed. And finally, I want to see us continuing to do what we can radically to tackle the threat of climate change. That is something which affects us all. It's something which I've put at the centre of my politics in Westminster over the last 14 years, and if re-elected, I will certainly try to continue to do. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, that's the second time we've been 6 seconds over, so it may be that we need to do 3 minutes and 6 seconds. It should be. Okay. Step up to the mic.
Good evening. My name is Melville. I am the UKIP candidate, as you may guess from the rosette. I'd like, if I may, to start with a quotation, because it sums up why I'm in UKIP, and I think it's quite a posit in the way our politics is run today. The quotation is from C.S. Lewis, and it goes, "A tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. They may be more likely to go to heaven, yet likelier to make a hell of earth. This very kindness stings with intolerable insult. To be cured of against our will, and cured of a state that we do not necessarily consider disease, is to be put on a level with those who have not yet achieved maturity of reason, nor ever will. To be classed along with infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals." Now, that's quite a powerful quote. And I sometimes wonder about our politics today, because most politicians seem to class us along with infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals. Too many people, too many officials seem to believe that we are there to be soaked, just as give them lots of money. We want trans. Fine, give us lots of money. We don't think you're fit to decide whether you can smoke or not, so we're going to ban packaging of cigarettes because you're too stupid not to be taken in by the shiny packaging. It's an attitude, and I think the attitude has to change, and that's why I joined UKIP, because the attitude starts right at the top with the European bureaucracy, which imposes regulation after regulation for our own good. for our own good. Well, I don't think it's for our own good. I think we need to be imposing the regulations on them. Thank you very much.
Boom, 30 seconds under. Let's give them a round of applause for that. And finally, Sarah. It's up to you.
Hands free. Do that.
Oh, no, I'm stepped down. I don't
Oh, no, sorry. I don't want you to step down.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move that round. Hello, I'm Sarah Beattie-Smith. I'm the Scottish Green Party candidate. This election is taking place at a time of poverty, of privatisation and of powerlessness. I think for many people in this room, talk of an economic recovery would be something that bears absolutely no relation to your lives right now. And I think that is an abject failure of our politics to fix the problems with our economy over the last 5 years, over the last 30 years of my lifetime. The Scottish Green Party stand for something different. We stand for an economy for the people and a society for all. And I want to set out three main things that the Green Party is standing for in this election. First off, we'll introduce a £10 minimum wage because we believe in equality, not poverty. And we'll roll back cruel benefits changes that punish the poor for their own poverty. Secondly, we believe in public services in public hands. So we will nationalise the railways and we'll protect services like the NHS from privatisation and from shady trade deals like TTIP that threaten our democracy. And third, we'll bring power to communities through devolving powers to the Scottish Parliament, but also down to local communities, and trust people to make the right decisions for what matters to them locally. During the economic downturn, the richest people, the richest 1,000 people across the UK, increased their wealth with enough money to pay off the deficit and have a few tens of billions left sitting over to pay for people, for services. Yet we're seeing 1 million people across the UK reliant on food banks. There's 400,000 people in Scotland earning a minimum wage, not a living wage, struggling to make ends meet. And in my lifetime, we've seen a trend where increasing numbers of public services are sold off for private profit, lining the pockets of some of the richest people and corporations in the country, and meaning that the money that we could get from those public services no longer support a thriving economy. But the Scottish Green Party is taking a stand, and we're standing for public services in public hands. That's why we're going to take the railways back into national ownership and put people and planet before profit. Look, whether you voted yes or no in the referendum last year, I think we can all agree that the referendum showed that people in Scotland are ready to take power back into their own hands. We're ready to have more power and to be more trusted. That's why, yet too many of our decisions are still taken really far away from us. They're taken by somewhere else. But the Scottish Green Party wants to bring democracy to our Parliament and to our communities and to our workplaces. So we'll push for the Smith Commission devolution plans to be delivered quickly and fully. None of the botched jobs that some of the parties are talking about. And we'll push for the Parliament to pass on powers to councils and to communities. And we'll fight for workers' rights and to roll back anti-trade union laws. And finally, for Greens, it almost goes without saying that we're anti-Trident. I think we'd scrap weapons of mass destruction on the Clyde. And I think for me, I think if we tolerate Trident, we've failed our future. And I don't want that on my watch. So if you believe in a party that stands for a living wage for everyone, a £10 minimum wage for everyone, that public services should be in public hands and that we should have power to communities, then vote Green this May and build an economy for the people and a society for all. Thanks very much.
Sarah loses the time battle. I'll think of a suitable punishment. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm open straight up to questions. What I'm going to try and do, just because I want to get as much out of this as we possibly can, is I'll take a first question, and then if you have a question on a similar theme, let's see if we can sort of try and group them together rather than jumping about all over the place. If it doesn't work, we'll just jump about all over the place. So can I have a first question? Gentleman here? Go. You can ask a specific candidate a question, but you have to be polite.
Oh, no, it is polite. last administration with SNP coalitions, not further cutting homelessness services, which you have done for the last 15 years, and it's been horrific that people out there in the streets. So I'll keep an eye on what you're promising to do. But the question I was about
Wait, I will let you, but let him ask his question first. Ooh.
Blogs of people quite closely, and I really enjoyed reading your blog, Sarah, and I noticed that you were very active in the referendum campaign last year, running group targets on Leith. And my question for you is about the statement you made in your blog about having been spat at and sworn at by the UKIP candidate, and is that true?
I have never spat at anyone in my life. I admit, because when I walk past people out in the weeds, my instinct is to run. But I never actually spat at anyone. I may have sworn, I have absolutely
Okay, right. But before this gets slightly out of control, I think this is a really good example of why everybody needs to just be incredibly respectful, and I appreciate your question, but let's move on. On homelessness, do we have any other questions about homelessness that we can sort of...
Just a point of order, and for the viewers at home, if
you want to use the microwave?
Repeat the question.
Okay.
Pass the microphone, because I'm not sure they're picking.
They're hearing everything.
There's
Okay.
just as many people watching at home as are in the room.
Oh gosh.
Let's try and keep this on a friendly way.
So there was a question about SNP local council policy on homelessness. So I guess the issue would be, so I'm interested if anybody else has any questions on homelessness that they'd like to ask the candidates, or if not, I'll just go to Deirdre to respond to the question. Do you want to use the mic?
15
Yeah.
15 years. Last two administrations.
But this-
Two SNPs, so 10 years.
It should work. I think the man has control of it. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Is it? No. Well, anyway, I mean, we reversed the cuts that were proposed in the budget,
Maybe
in the
not
draft
switched on.
budget. That might be something to do.
It is actually content.
How's that?
Hold it right up.
We reversed the cuts that came when we had a considerable amount of discussions with homelessness services, and we responded to that. So that's not quite true.
Well,
So
it kind of is. But
not really.
the guy who works in the field for 20 years knows that
You know that we reversed it, though, last year.
I know that there are less staff in all the hostels now. I know that there is 40% less staff in hostels than there were in the previous SNP coalition, and even less if you go back to when Labour had the council. I know that the SNP and Labour councils have cut the only specialised outreach service for people in mental health crisis who are homeless, and they did that quite happily, despite repeated attempts. It was absolutely happy. Despite repeated attempts. Well, you can shake your head, actually, Deirdre, but people...
Yeah, I was going to say you're pontificating a little,
Well,
and I take
sharing the knowledge.
so.
You might be able to see behind the lines.
Would anybody else from the panel like to comment on this issue, or shall we move on?
Oh, we would reverse those cuts.
Can I could perhaps ask a question, perhaps you're both right. You've spent more money, but more has gone on bureaucracy and less on actual people who are sitting there doing the job.
Okay,
That's quite possible.
Iain.
Yeah, my background is in homelessness, homeless services here, and I still supply staff to the homeless services that are around. 15 years ago, up to 10 years ago, we had a world-class suite of homeless services in Edinburgh, which was properly world-class, world leading. We had a nice competition in London to see who could have the best homeless services. And the last two councils haven't done that. We don't at the moment. There are some interesting things. A culture of fear around the council, because if you speak out, you lose your funding. And that's been demonstrated across not just
Thanks, Sarah.
services, across other voluntary sector organisations as well. It was interesting. The previous council, the Labour SNP council,
Labour Lib Dem.
Labour Lib Dem council there, and I'll dish out praise and I'll dish out criticism, because when talking about a world-class suite of homeless services we had, that was under a Labour council, followed up with a Labour Lib Dem council where Their only defeat was on the voluntary sector, where they tried tendering out services for folks with learning disabilities. It was a horrible process they tried to put through. It was a wrong process. They were able to argue and have advocates for them.
Yeah.
Were able to defeat the council. Homeless folk are less friendly and able to advocate for themselves. But even recently, a homeless hostel, the Salvation Army Ashbrook Hostel, was shut down by the care inspectorate on Ferry Road in this constituency because of the staffing levels. They couldn't afford to maintain staffing levels that were appropriate. So this is going on. Check it out.
Yeah. I guess some people might argue that the cuts that are coming down from Westminster are maybe part of that issue. So, Mark, would you like to comment?
Very briefly. Is that on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very briefly. I mean, it was actually the Lib Dem SNP council, not a Labour Lib Dem council, which cut the homelessness.
Yes.
But in any event, that happened some time ago. And obviously, there was a campaign I was involved in trying to change that. There are 2 points I want to make. That's, looking at the UK level, this is the UK election, the key points go out of this is, first of all, the answer to homelessness, of course, is to build more houses. We want to see 200,000 more houses. Our party, I'm sure, want to do the same as well. But let's try and go for the cause of the problems, and what I think is something we need to concentrate on. And the second point I want to make is in terms of local government funding. There is obviously an issue, but local government funding has been the subject of a freeze in Scotland in terms of council tax for a number of years. That has been supported by most of the parties. I have to say that I think my party should think again about that. That's the matter for the Scottish Parliament, for UK Parliament as far as Scotland's concerned. But I do think it highlights the point. If you actually want to provide good services, you actually have to pay for them as well. And I think all parties have to face up to that. And that's perhaps something which we should not lose sight of either.
Okay, if money grew on trees. Next, okay, I'm going to go with this lady here because I'm an equal opportunities kind of question taker.
It was just funny because you said if money only grows on trees. I'd like to know, I think a living wage would be great because I don't earn that much, but I'd like to know where you're going to get the money from to pay that living wage. What else is going to get cut? Because obviously there isn't a never-ending pot of money, so what are you proposing to cut to allow everyone to get a living wage?
Okay, so a question on the living wage and how that might be funded. Does anybody have any other similar questions on sort of employment, living wage, cost of living, tax? Oh, let's lump that in, shall we, and see what happens. Go.
Well, I think income tax is one of the few fair means of taxation. Are any of the parties prepared to put income tax up?
Okay, so are we going to be prepared to put income tax as one of the ways to raise money? Okay, well, the question was first addressed to Sarah, so I'll let you take it first on living wage, and then anybody else who wants to come in, please indicate that to me.
So to answer your question directly, our policy is to have a £10 minimum wage by 2020, by the end of the next Parliament. We would do that by raising the minimum wage to the living wage immediately. So there's a gap at the moment. It's about £6.50 for a minimum wage, and the living wage is about £7.85, so there's already a gap. And we incrementally increase that from £7.85 up to £10 over the course of the Parliament. In terms of how we pay for it, people asked the same question back in the 90s when we introduced the minimum wage, when Labour introduced the national minimum wage. And a lot of businesses kind of had a panic going, I can't possibly put my wages up from £2 an hour to £3 an hour. Actually what happened was that because people who are working quite often in small businesses had their wages go up, they were spending more as well, and the whole economy benefited. And actually it was good for business. So you found actually that the economy benefited as a whole, that tax take went up, that businesses did better, and it's a cyclical economic policy. To very quickly address your point on tax, we advocate a 1% wealth tax on the richest people, and we're for progressive taxation. So the richer you are, the more you pay in tax. It's quite clear that the richest people in our society and the richest corporations in our society are not paying anything like enough tax at the moment. So yes, we're in favour of those changes.
Okay, Iain was the first person to catch my eye. Please be brief.
Yeah, brief. On the living wage, do you know, if the living wage doesn't cost anything, let's make it £30 an hour or £50 an hour. But obviously, do you know what it does? There are costs there. Scottish.
I work for a charity,
Yeah.
and our funding is about to be cut
Yes.
because of all the cuts across.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like
Yeah.
everything's being cut. How are you going to?
So it is. So Scottish Conservatives, we are very keen to see folks get towards it, and we're looking at the way government can help that. So we know, for instance, that the charities getting the funding cut, that's not helping them get to the living wage. So we're proposing cutting the business rates for organisations that are close to the living wage and want to get there. we can help that by giving them a rebate on the business rates to get them over, because we think that will help boost. On the income tax, our big priority is making work pay, and and you'll see with the tax allowance coming up to £12,500 a year before folks start paying, it's very much bringing the lowest paid out of paying income tax, and that again helps very much there. And we've seen the minimum wage increasing above inflation, and we've seen apprentices getting a 20% increase in the budget just there. So we're looking very much to how can we make sure, so for someone on minimum wage working full time at the moment, under the last Labour government we're paying £1,200 a year in tax, and under us at the moment it's £200 a year, and we'd like to get down the line of taking them out. So that's where our priorities are.
If we can pass the microphone back down this end for Bruce, who wants to comment, and then I saw Deirdre, Mark, Pramod. Yep, everybody wants to comment on this one. Okay,
in addition to what Sarah said,
I'll come back to the audience.
We would introduce progressive taxation, rising to 90% for people with assets over 100 times the average size of an estate in inheritance tax. And on income tax, we would introduce a 50p rate for those earning more than 75,000. The one thing that sets our party out separate from the others, I would say, is that we're against capitalism. We think that capitalism is responsible for most of the ills that we face, and that's the one difference which I think we have with the Greens.
Thank you. Nice and brief too, I like that.
Okay, well, firstly, yes, the SNP fully support the principle of the living wage campaign. We were the first Scottish government to... Can you hear me? This is... Yeah, okay.
I think they can hear better than we can.
All right, okay, fine. We were the first Scottish government to introduce a living wage for all of our employees. That was, that's the NHS as well, so the Scottish pay policy is for the living wage. And for those earning under £21,000 a year, that's greater again. We can't set the pay of employees, currently anyway, who are not covered by Scottish Government pay policies. Apparently that's a breach of obligations under the EU legislation. We can't make it mandatory. However, as part of the Procurement Reform Bill, we have introduced statutory guidance which will make it necessary for public bodies trying to be selected as bidders for a contract. They will have to take into account conditions of their employees. Otherwise, they'll be at a competitive disadvantage. So we are trying to do what we can in that area, and we are also, of course, promoting the living wage accreditation scheme too. So,
thank you. Just pass it along, and we'll finish everybody.
In terms of tax policy, I have to admit I'm much closer to Iain's position than anybody else's.
Can you hold it right up to your mouth?
Hold up, right up. Is that better?
Like you're in One Direction. You could be auditioning to be Zayn Malik.
You don't want to have me say. You really don't want to have me say. Go on.
Maybe that's it. Whoever I decide does best gets to be in One Direction.
Tax. I much prefer to see people not paying tax than raising wages and costs for business. Taking people out of tax doesn't increase business costs. Raising a minimum wage does, and all the minimum wages in the world are irrelevant if a company can't afford to pay you and take you on in the first place. The other issue on tax generally, I hate to be agreeing with Tories, but Lawson called this one right. We have a lot of issues with tax avoidance and tax evasion in this country. If you make all the top rates of tax the same, it doesn't matter what source your income is, because there's no point in trying to get through a loophole. There aren't any. We need to close the cut tax loophole so that everybody pays the amount of tax that we all have to pay, whether we're earning through PAYE, whether we're investment fund brokers, whether we're getting royalties from songs. It doesn't matter. We should all pay the same rate of tax on the income we get, and that would be the simplest solution. Right now, tax accountants can't understand the tax code. So what hope of the rest of us?
Mark?
Bearing in mind your request to answer the questions directly, I'll try and answer the questions directly. First of all, on tax, our policy is that there should be an increase of the top tax rate to 50p from 45p. We're also in favour of a tax on bankers' bonuses, and we're in favour of the mansion tax, a tax on property worth more than £2 million across the UK, and in Scotland our share of the income raised would, as you know, some people know, will go towards extra funds for the health service. In terms of the living wage and minimum wage, the Labour government brought it in, and at the time most of our parties opposed us. I'm delighted they all now think it's a good idea, and I think that's why it's important to move forward to the living wage concept. We don't think it should be compulsory, precisely because of the kind of issue that our friend over here raised about some businesses might have difficulty with it. But we want to make it something which, first of all, every government procurement should require payment of the living wage to contractors, local government similarly, and it's been Labour councils, again, in Edinburgh with the SNP as well, to be fair, which made Edinburgh a living wage council. The other point I would make is that when you talk about the changes in tax, it's also important to look at things like the change in tax credits, because though it is true that the starting rate of tax was raised under the present government, there's also been really big change in tax credits, which have been particularly damaging, particularly for women, because of the effect on child tax credit. Overall, in fact, we work out that the average household is actually £1,100 a year worse off once you take into account the changes in the tax, but alongside of a change in tax credits as well. So that needs to be put into the equation when you look at the impact on particular policies.
Thank you.
Right, £10 an hour. Now, I don't own a small business, but I know the person who runs my practice owns a small business. Now, if he had to pay £10 an hour and provide, I'm a dentist, and so if we were to provide NHS dental services and paying most of our employees £10 an hour, I mean the non-dentist employees, I think we would really struggle to continue to provide these services. And I think most small employers, it would just break their backs if we didn't also give them significant tax reductions and other measures. I would definitely be in favor of going to the £7.80 bit, but £10 I think is a stretch too far. Maybe after 2020, depending on how things are, how inflation is, it's something we can look at. But during the next parliament, I don't think so. What I will agree with is raising the top rate to 50p. I will agree with taxing bankers' bonuses. I would agree with wealth taxes on properties. I would agree generally with progressive taxation, but I don't think anybody, anywhere, should ever be working more for the government than for themselves. So I would cap it at 50p, no more than 50p. The main problem here is the people who evade, the people who avoid, the big multinationals who are not paying their fair share, and we've got to really tackle that.
Okay, I'm going to come back to the questioners. Do you feel that you have had a satisfactory answer to your questions?
Yes, I will.
Kind of. Okay, I'm just going to quickly check in with the lady who asked about. You're good? Okay, you don't have to call me madam. That's fine. If you just, if you wish to. Feeling I'm being sort of ousted.
In Jesus' name, I'd like to ask a very general question. It is a democratic meeting.
Yes, no, absolutely. On you go. Brought up in the church.
I would ask for your prayers as I do so. I'm also prepared to give a one-sentence answer to my own question after the candidates have answered or responded. And the question is this, ladies and gentlemen, and listen very carefully, because it's a very simple question. Sense the tension already. What is your definition of politics? And how will that definition enable the representation of the people at local level? And by God Almighty, I am not joking.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to instill my chair's rights and stretch that to a question about local democracy.
Please answer the question.
Absolutely. So what does politics mean, and how can you use that to improve local democracy? And I think, does anybody else have any questions about local democracy, about the way that we want to change things working locally? I know gentleman who's been waiting and someone who I can't see.
Do the candidates agree that the Edinburgh Council planning process is a crisis? And if yes, what would they do with it? And if no, why not?
Okay, and lady I can't see.
Again, it's just a general one, and it's in view of recent unsavoury revelations about UK politicians and their parties not fulfilling election promises of the past. How do you and your party increase your credibility over the next term?
Okay, so that we've got sort of a general question about credibility, about what politics means to you, and about how you see that the relationship between representative politics and local democracy, and then a very specific question about Edinburgh planning. And actually, and I'm going to again take the prerogative and broaden it out, because I think actually the planning system, full stop, could probably be a similar question could probably be asked. So, what might you do to help with planning, given that it's a completely devolved issue and not really relevant to this election? Who wants to go first?
I've got the microphone.
Hey.
Politics is about fairness. It's about sharing all the resources with everyone. The best thing to implement that locally is proportional representation.
Oh, thank you.
We don't have that in this election. We need it. That's one of the things that really should have been used by the SNP in the referendum vote, and they didn't mention it very much. So enfranchisement, so that you don't feel your votes are wasted. Credibility. Come and see Ken Loach's film that inspired the party, The Spirit of 45, about the dismantling of the welfare state. You'll learn a lot about why we formed the party, and keep an eye on us, and you can tell us if we're remaining credible. And planning. What was the question about planning?
Is Edinburgh City Council's planning system broken? And I would extend that to, is the planning system broken?
It's not as democratic as it should be.
Okay, so in terms of politics, I'm a councillor. I've been a councillor for nearly 8 years. For me, being a politician is about going out there and speaking to people. It's not about having a second job, because I remember one of the MPs, when all of the nonsense about Jack Straw and Malcolm Rivkin was going on, suggested that that was how you stayed in touch with people, and without having a second or a third or a fourth job, how on earth would you do that? Well, for me, it's about going to community councils and parent councils and residents associations and walking up and down Leith Walk and going out into the community all the time, because that is what I do. I do that a lot. I think I'm known for it, and I think I'm recognised as a hard worker who attends a lot of those sorts of meetings, because without that, how the heck do you know what people are thinking and what they want you to do? I don't know. You can get your emails, but it's not the same thing. You know, you need to be out there in your community. So that's my feeling on that. Planning crisis, I'm on the planning committee. So commenting on that is tricky. And I'm a little bit concerned about legally how because, you know, you have to be quite cautious. Hey?
You have a waiver.
I have a waiver today. Yeah, it's just in this room, isn't it? Let me come back to that anyway. I'll have to think about that. And the other thing was about...
Maybe you could talk in the break.
Community empowerment bill. That's something that the SNP government's brought in and really believes in. It's about devolving power down to communities. I mean, I think Nordic Horizons and some of the work that's going on there is really interesting, and I think that's something we should definitely be looking a lot more closely at. And in terms of keeping our commitments, I mean, we had manifesto commitments. The SNP government's been in now for 2 terms nearly. And, you know, we had free prescriptions, we had frozen council tax, we had no tuition fees. I mean, there's a series of commitments that we have kept to that were in our manifestos. So, I mean, you can look at our track record and how we have consistently tried to look after the poor and vulnerable, and tried to share as much as we can within the limited powers that the SNP has available to it in devolved government.
Thank you.
What is politics? I love that. Politics, to me, is about, I think we mentioned it earlier, it's about the exchange of ideas. It's about different people with different views getting together, and the representatives of the majority and the representatives of the minority all sitting down and agreeing a compromise that we all can live with. We all have different opinions, but ultimately we've all got to live with the consequences of any law or regulation passed. Is the planning system broken? Yes. Simple, straight up. Just look at the number of things that just go through with nobody seeming to stop local opposition. Local opposition is ignored, they just put the things through. Yes, I think it's absolutely broken. How would we restore credibility? You just have to keep your word. We had a Labour government that actually claimed in court that its manifesto promise for an EU constitution referendum was not binding because the EU constitution was now called the Lisbon Treaty. I don't think that's credible politics. I don't think that's credibility in any way whatsoever. You keep your word. If you say you'll do something, you do it.
Okay, thank you.
Politics is ultimately about giving the people the chance to decide the destiny of their country and the destiny of their communities, and that's what all politicians should be trying to ensure happens. On the question of credibility, I believe the record of the last Labour government was in very many respects a very good one. I won't spend the time going over all the things were done. Something I didn't like, obviously for me the biggest thing I didn't like was the Iraq War, when I didn't support the government as on one or two other occasions as well. But credibility is in what you do, and credibility, I hope, if we're elected later this year, will be in what we do over the next few years. But I don't think people just trust politicians to do the right thing. I think there's an issue about the political system. That is why, as I said earlier on, I think we need to do something about getting big money out of politics, getting the lobbying influence. We need to get away from the House of Lords, which is appointed, and replace it by an elected second chamber, which represent the nations and regions of the UK. Personally, I do actually agree with Leith Walk on this. I do think we should have a system of proportional representation. I think we also need to have a wider constitutional convention of the UK as a whole, as we did in Scotland, to actually ensure that we do get constitutional change which people across the country are prepared to support. On the question of the planning process, I think that, I'm not going to make a comment. I've not been a councillor for many years, and I don't think I was on the planning committee for more than 2 months. But I think the issues faced for council are difficult, but I think what needs to be done is to ensure that communities are empowered. It should be really a question of reacting to developments. It should be giving the chance to communities to be proactive when it comes to developments, proactive when it comes to housing. I think the current council does try to do that, but I think it does need change of legislation for that to happen. But that is something for the Scottish Parliament, not for UK Parliament, so I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mark. Just keep moving on.
Right, I think I'll agree with Alan's definition of politics. Different people coming together with different ideas in the common interest. And I think that is what this coalition has done. The Conservatives and Liberal Democrats, different parties with very different ideas, coming together in a common national interest, and I think they've done a fantastic job. As far as localism and federalism are concerned, as far as localism and federalism are concerned, I believe localism and federalism, the Lib Dems have been standing for localism and federalism since before those words existed. And the council planning process, I haven't had much experience of it, but there's one thing that's happened. In the past few weeks, I was asked to oppose a certain development. I did, and I won my way, so I'm happy with that. And, well, that's pretty much.
Anyone wants help with planning, you know where to go.
Let's get the schedule till the
I love your question about politics. I think we all got the fear when you opened it that way. So for me, this question is really interesting about what is politics. And I think that too often we talk about politics as something that other people do in faraway places. And that's why we talk about politicians quite often in such damaging terms, maybe. They kind of don't help themselves a lot of the time. But for me, we're all politicians. My definition of politics is about how we make decisions about how we... Shall I wait until they finish? Okay, cool. It's about how we decide how we run our society, essentially. It's about how we divvy up resources. It's about how we decide how to treat one another, how to protect one another, how to protect the planet we live on, all of those things. It's about the decision-making process, I suppose. And I guess that takes us on to how that changes democracy, and Greens are massively in favour of huge changes to democracy and much more local democracy. That's why power to communities is the kind of third big strand of our policies this year. For me, I think something like Leith Decides, the sort of participatory budgeting model, that participatory politics, is a fantastic example of how democracy works in practice. It's people coming together with a resource in their hands, choosing in a kind of proportional way how to allocate the resources that they have to each other, to the community. I think more things like that are absolutely needed. I agree with Deidre on Nordic Horizons, the kind of work that Leslie Riddick and Andy Whiteman have done, particularly around how we change local democracy and local councils. There's a desperate need to change the size of our local councils. It's absolutely absurd that we have a council like Highland Council that's the size of Belgium, that suddenly you're supposed to be able to make decisions for local people in that. Really quickly on the planning in crisis, I kind of don't know. And part of the reason I don't know whether our planning is in crisis in Edinburgh City Council is because I don't really feel like as a citizen there's an easy way for me to get involved in our planning process. It's something that community councils do, and community councils have almost no power at all, and almost no one stands for them, so there are very rarely elections. So most of the people in this room wouldn't even know that there is a community council in the area that they could go to about these things. So if maybe that means it's in crisis, but I think our disconnection from it is probably a symbol of that too.
And finally, Iain.
Thank you. Yeah, definition of politics. I touched a little bit on when I did my opening statement. Been very aware of being a teenager and becoming very aware of politics as I watched the Cold War ending, the Berlin Wall coming down, and and we're still seeing the effects of politics now. We don't have to look too far to see just what positive impact the Polish community we have around here now. And politics changed, and suddenly these folks are able to come around, work, travel, better themselves. And politics can be such a force for good and such a force for bad. And and that's influenced me since I was a teenager. And it's one of the reasons that I got involved there was just being very aware that if you don't get involved, then it can be a real force for bad there. So, I'd be encouraging everyone who's not involved to absolutely get involved. I almost feel it's a duty to get involved. So for me, what's politics? For me, it's a duty, because if you don't, bad things will happen, and bad things do happen. You look around the world at places, it's not great. The planning process and local democracy, I like community councils, I do. I stood against Deirdre for the council and she beat me. I stood against Mark for MP and he beat me. I stood for the community council and straight on. Straight on, right? So it is. So I would urge you again, though, it's part of the duty. I'm going to get my revenge this time and beat Mark this time. But it is the planning process. It's fair to say City of Edinburgh Council doesn't have a great reputation at the moment. We're just approaching half time. It's been kicked twice over its voluntary sector record. One mention of trams so far and once on planning. It does have problems, and a lot of them are institutional there. But local how do we devolve stuff down? The example that gets me most riled and most worked up at the moment, anyone that follows my Twitter feed, it seems every second day Police Scotland have done something else that's just absolutely against everything that we would be standing for in Edinburgh and keen to see here in Edinburgh. And it's just indicative of the centralising agenda we have from Holyrood at the moment, setting one police policy across Scotland as opposed to having our local councillors and local people setting our policies here in Edinburgh that suit us here in Edinburgh. That is a very different place to Strathclyde, but that's just indicative of the way things are going at the moment with SNP and Holyrood, and I'd be very, very keen to be turning that round, having local councillors and local areas making their own policing policies, and that goes through absolutely everything else there as well. And on the PR thing, yeah, I mean, PR is nice, it's handy, it's a good soundbite. PR gave us David Coburn.
No, it didn't. We had this conversation already. Right. We're going to have a little break. I don't know about you because I'm quite warm, and so I think probably just a chance to get some fresh air. Please. Oh, do you want to do your one sentence?
Yes, certainly I do. However, I'd like to have a show to establish my right to do so of the democratic atmosphere or level in this company as the representation of the people. So may we please, through the chair, have a show of hands of even one person who has a big enough heart instead of an overdeveloped brain who would like to hear a one-sentence definition, not of the activities of politics. Yeah, just get
I was going to say, come on. What's your sentence? Go. I'm really hot.
The politics of God is the influencing of the heart of the nation in service to that nation with no exception whatsoever. So help me God. Thank you for listening.
Well, on that note, we'll take a quick break. I would like to say, if you have specific candidate questions for any of the candidates, please do approach them. They are humans. They are available. I've dropped them in it now. And we'll be back in 1:45, and we'll do another round of questions. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. First things first, I got the hashtag wrong. It's hashtag ENL hustings, which makes so much more sense than EN hustings. So, but you know, hey-ho, I'm sure we'll all get the message. But straight back into questions, and I was, a lady approached me during the break, so I'm going to go straight to her. And, madam, your question.
Okay, can you hear me? I live just down the road from here. I've been living in that address for the last 6 years. And we've had several little callings to a nice little hall down there where I've gone and put my cross. However, I've had avalanches of information, especially from the SNP. I've only ever seen people from the Labour Party. Nobody else has bothered to come and see us down here in Leith. So I don't know about the rest of you, but I think that this sucks. And I'd like to see and be able to speak to humans, not pieces of paper, in the near future.
Well, thank you for coming along tonight and making the effort to come to where they are, instead of them coming to where you are. Quick straw poll, who has encountered someone from a political party chapping at your door in the run-up to this campaign? Anyone? A handful. And have they been from one particular party or more broadly?
I have to say I've met Iain.
Yeah, I'm Iain. Yeah. SNP. So I guess the question is then, guys, like, how hard is it to get to people? How hard is it to sort of actively meet people on the streets? Do you think that we are over leafleting? Are we maybe using electronic means of communicating better or not as well as we could? That kind of thing. How do you actually get your message out to the voters? Who wants to go? Man with the microphone.
It kind of helps if you're in the country first. So I think I'll wait for Martin to come back, and I'm pretty sure when he comes back, he's told me that he's going to spend the full 5 weeks on the campaign, and I'm pretty sure he'll be at your doorstep soon. Right?
Yes, to be fair.
Yeah, a few things. It's a great question, and it's a great question and a common frustration. Part of it is grounded in reality. So personally, I'm out twice a day. I do an afternoon canvass and an evening canvass. But we also do several hustings like this. But there's a practicality of an electorate of more than 70,000 in this seat, which gets us down to about 50,000 doors, which is a lot of people to get around. So I would say, we're working very hard. I reckon I'll get about 6,000 doors knocked, and that means there's about 44,000 doors that I'm not going to get around. So we try and be accessible. For those of you that don't have to follow me on Twitter or whatever, or engage with me on Twitter, we have good conversations there. But other parts of it is very much the public meetings. We've got another 5 or 6. But there's other things too. During the referendum, I'm sure you got doors knocked. We've done every door in Leith with the Better Together campaign. The last 2 years we've been running knocking doors with Better Together. We couldn't get moving on Leith Walk for bumping into Deirdre and her mob with saying yes and we're saying no. And do you know what it is? Did you get a door knock in the referendum?
No.
No.
Do we?
Yeah.
Quick.
Anyway, but that's how I'm doing it. The leaflets we're doing are all done by volunteers, and it's on ourselves. Some of the bigger parties with. Where
are you going with this?
More resources there. With more resources, maybe from their roles as councillors or MPs are able to afford more deliveries. But we shall see.
I guess I would quickly add as well, do we think that because this election in Scotland especially is so close to the wire, I mean the polls are close across the country, but in Scotland it's even weirder. We don't really know what's going to happen. It's not the same as usual. Do you think that parties are making more of an effort? Like, for instance, I live in a safe seat, so I very rarely get any kind of canvassing or leafleting because there's no point. It was. Obviously nowhere's safe anymore. But that's just to sort of throw that into the mix as well, which is mostly actually something I'm interested in for my work. I'm being terribly selfish, sorry.
Question to the audience?
I think you can go and then they can feed back in if they wish to.
Okay, I'll be really quick. I think similar to Iain, I've been out and about canvassing and door knocking, but it's really hard to get round everyone's door, so I'm really sorry that I've not made it down to you. In the referendum, I was out for weeks and weeks and weeks knocking doors and canvassing. I was up the road at the TARDIS, only for a couple of weeks before the referendum. But, you try and have conversations with people kind of face-to-face. I think it's really important. But I think there's maybe a kind of issue around our expectations of what we want from politicians. And like I was saying before, if politicians are somebody other, somebody different, someone off in a suit somewhere that comes around once every 5 years, and you're going to expect them to knock all your doors, then you're probably going to be disappointed. If politicians are just people like us, and there's lots of us all doing it together, then it's a lot more accessible for people, and we can actually have the kind of political discussions that are a lot healthier for a democracy. It's the kind of thing that we're trying to do here, actually, in the Common, have those kind of discussions. So there's only 500 of us in the Green Party in Edinburgh. No, sorry, there were 500. There's now 2,000 of us. We got a bit bigger. We're trying to get out. I'll leave it.
Mark.
Same comments to everyone else to a certain extent. The reality is that it is actually very hard knocking on doors in Leith Walk by the time you go over tenement stairs and the rest of that, so that is part of the reality. But obviously we also, all of us rely upon volunteers. Those of you who would like to join the Labour campaign, my campaign, please see me at the end, and I'm happy to recruit you to that campaign. Others I'm sure will do so if we haven't already done so. And by the way, Iain, there are no resources to MPs or councillors when it comes to elections, and we rely upon entirely volunteers. Like everyone else, I'm out a lot campaigning, knocking on doors with colleagues, to some extent to a slight disadvantage, because I am still, until Saturday, the MP, and until today we were sitting in Parliament, so I actually have to go to London and do my job there as well the last few weeks. But yes, we all get round, and I think it is this issue of how you try and get in touch with people, through different forms, through social media as well, of course, and as well as leaflets, and through things like this. And as I agree absolutely with the serious point about, I suspect most people are probably, many of you here are involved in politics anyway in some way or another. But those of you aren't, if you're interested in politics, get involved in the political party if it's one which you feel closest to. And that is really how you'll get the message over to make sure it's not just once in a blue moon that someone actually comes to your door.
Hard to argue with any of that. It does come down
Outbreak
to
of consensus.
No. It does. It comes down to resources. I think there are about 50 UKIP members, actual party members in Edinburgh. That's not a lot in a city of 600,000. It comes down to the mathematics. We can only walk so many miles and knock on so many doors. Yep. Hopefully, we'll probably all come down to find your door now, because we know who you are. So you'll probably see all of us.
You'll never get rid of us.
Asking that guy.
I'm sorry we haven't been to your door. I mean, we've certainly, in the referendum, everyone in the Yes campaign, and there were lots of SNP members involved in that, of course, did a lot of door knocking. We did a lot of telecanvassing, so we were ringing people as well and finding out what they thought. And we're doing that now. I mean, we've got stalls with the SNP in this constituency out every weekend now, and at least 3 or 4 places across, over in Granton and Leith Library, and we would have had it at the Kirkgate, but of course that's being done up at the moment. So, but we've got one today. We've got one on Saturday at Crown Place on Leith Walk. So we are trying to get out there as much as we can. As I said, as a councillor, I try to go to as many things as I can on the weekends and evenings, and trying to speak to people there as well. Just get in touch with us. I'm on Twitter as well, and a number of the constituency itself has its own Twitter account, its own Facebook page as well, so you can get in touch via that too.
If I could quote the local boys, the Proclaimers, I would walk 10,000 miles. I disagree with everything they said. I don't think there's any excuse for it. Why are they only doing it at election time? We'll be round. We'll be round. I will make a point, if I'm elected, of visiting you regularly, and I'd like to make an appointment with you after this and come and visit you. We have been down at the Kirkgate, was our first leafleting, and we're planning to be outside Pilrig Church on Saturday along with Rick, the Radical Independence Coalition, and we look forward to seeing Leithers there, and we'll try and get around the rest of the huge constituency too. I do concede it's very big.
I think, it's something that we do a lot of work on at Electoral Reform Society, is how do you, that you have to go to where people are. You can't always expect them to come to you, but equally there's a time constraint and a resource constraint. So I think there's something in between that. And certainly we think that, sort of getting people more involved in local democracy so that you're making the decisions yourself, and it's not about finding somebody else who can make them for you, is actually quite an interesting concept. But I digress. Digress. Thank you. Anyway, another question, please. Any questions from women? Okay, well, I'd like to hopefully go alternately, so if there's another woman with a question, that would... Perfect, thank you. Oh, there we go. You go. Sir.
Okay, hi. I'm going to be a little bit cheeky because it's about education. I know it's evolved, but I know you've all got colleagues with MSPs. I studied Granton College, Edinburgh College, Granton, and they're changing faculties, they're moving them. My faculty has been moved halfway through my course. The people in my class are single mothers. They can't afford to move an hour across town. So I want to know what the parties are doing about this. No students or lecturers were consulted, we're just told we'll move during the year. And it's happening across all the campuses, and there's no consultation with any of the people who actually matter, the students and the staff. I want to know who's doing this and how they can get the students and the lecturers back involved in where the courses will be.
Yeah, and I'm aware there's an issue with the Duncan Place Resource Centre in a similar fashion. Sorry, so this question was about the moving of the campus at Granton, and that it's moving so far without any consultation with teachers or students that could be quite negative for some of the students involved, especially single mothers. And I was reflecting that I'm aware of a problem with Duncan Place as well in the constituency, which is a similar thing. It was a resource centre for quite a lot of non-native speakers doing English as a foreign language, and had to be closed without consultation. I'm going to take your question as well, and we can answer them all as a wanna. Go.
I hate to bring up the subject of tactical voting because I'm sick of the vote SNP, get Labour, vote SNP, get Tory. But my questions are really for Left Unity and the Greens, I suppose, with whom I would be more politically, affiliated with than the others, I would think, but yet still will probably vote SNP because, unfortunately, much as it's exciting what's happening in Greece and Spain, I don't think we're there yet. I don't think
we
we're
won't be
nearly
if you
there
don't
yet.
support us.
And we don't have a proportional representation voting system. So, in my mind, voting SNP, because I'm afraid, Mark, although I do think you're a decent candidate, I don't know at what point the Labour Party could ever do anything that you might vote against, but you wouldn't leave. Where's your line?
Okay.
But for you two,
so
in this particular instance, at this particular time, is it not for the best for us to vote for something that is different?
So, question about tactical voting. About tactical voting and sort of, I guess, what was broadly talked about after the independence referendum as the Yes Alliance. And obviously, I would point out that, yes, if we had a proportional voting system, then this would be question would be null and void. I will come to you. Is it directly related?
Yes.
Okay, go, Jane.
I'm unimpressed by the talk from Labour leadership, as if, assuming that Labour and SNP could together make a majority, Labour would instead effectively step down and let us have 5 more years of Tory government, rather than acceptable.
Yes, so a reflection on ruling things out before we've even got to election day, even though they could be quite good or not good. Yes. She says, trying very hard to remain neutral. Okay, guys, so a specific question about Granton campuses and a question, I guess, about lack of consultation, more specifically, or sort of more broadly, and then the questions about tactical voting and whether people should be ruling in or out deals with other parties. Bruce.
I actually wrote a couple of articles about this for the Evening News last summer when I was freelancing there. A whistleblower in the college got in touch and told us what was happening there. One job evaluation system was being used for the teaching staff, and another system was being used for the ancillary support staff. It was grossly unfair. It was extremely costly and inefficient. And we reported that and contributed to the debate by doing so. At least the media gets a lot of stick, and it deserves it. But on that occasion, we were able to air a very important issue and see it debated. I don't know if anything's changed since then, and I know that they're after a lot more cuts.
Decisions are being made, and then being forced. It's presented as if they come back. Because this is it. It's done deal. We were told, and I spoke to the association. They said they wanted something.
Okay. If we can. Obviously, because it is quite a specific issue, so let's just try and be brief about it, and we can maybe, I think probably if you have a chat with Deirdre afterwards as well would be a good idea.
We would restore the cuts that led to this, as I've said before. The lady talking about tactical voting, we still hope that your conscience will win out. We still hope that you'll recognise that we're the only anti-capitalist party standing. And socialist party. The other parties claim to be socialist, but they're not. And we have to start from small beginnings, and it did take a long time with Syriza and Podemos. But Syriza are in power. Podemos might be next in a couple of months. And the socialist sentiment is sweeping across Europe. I keep saying this. Please have some courage. Nail your courage to the mast and help us. And your vote will still be counted because it will still be there, along with hopefully our increasing support. And I don't know really about the possibility of an SNP Labour coalition. Well, it's going to be a working relationship, isn't it? And maybe if it helps Scotland down the road to independence, that might change politics here. And maybe that would be a good thing if we got proportional representation out of it. But I would hope that that would be a major demand of the SNP.
Thank you. Duncan Place Resource Centre, it's Colin, is it? Yeah, hi. Yes, I got an answer back on that yesterday, I think it was, and they said that there weren't any problems that came about as a result of that shift. So I'm going to go back to them, and when I do, don't worry. And we could talk about that afterwards. Don't worry. I know. So this is always, this is where it starts. You get the email, and then you go back, and so we'll talk some more after this. Yeah. In terms of the SNP Labour coalition, I think the potential for change here is enormous and incredibly exciting. And I think that STV is absolutely something the SNP's committed to. So the potential for that change in itself, first past the post, is utterly unfair, and it should have been got rid of. I mean, we've had STV, or a form of STV in Australia, since I left in 1996, and it was well before that. Why it hasn't been, I think we do know why it hasn't been introduced here, because it suited some parties very well. That would be a major thing that we could potentially change if we go into some sort of informal alliance, a potentially progressive alliance with Green representatives, Plaid Cymru. I mean, the possibilities there are just, I get really quite excited about, as you can probably hear. So I mean, I think I would suggest that in this election, yes, vote SNP, because you might expect that, I know. But there is the possibility of real change there, and it is, I'm afraid, under this system, only possible through that vote for the SNP. Next year, of course, we're back to the AV vote and, the potential for a rainbow parliament again, which personally I would welcome very much. I think it's the right way to go about things. You need a range of voices in a parliament, and I think that's really important. So.
No democracy that's introduced or changed their voting system since the beginning of the last century has changed it to first past the post.
Interesting. I remember the STV referendum we had.
AV referendum. That's a different thing.
AV referendum, correct.
Bad compromise.
I point out, however, that UKIP, who supported it, Nigel Farage, was deliberately excluded by the people who were pushing for it because he wasn't of the right political hue. If the system's right, it shouldn't matter what your politics are. Regarding the college, I'm not at all surprised. I believe the phrase that about there being no problems, well, they would say that, wouldn't they? But I was student president at Napier once upon a time, and that was the year they closed the science faculty without actually bothering to tell anybody. The university, they just decided, we're not going to have a science faculty anymore, move a few departments around. Management, unfortunately, seem to do this. Somebody makes a decision, and the people who should be consulted, the governors, may not even have been consulted. They're given, this is the document, this is our plans, this is how it goes, and it just goes through in the nod. It shouldn't, but unfortunately it does. And that's, again, it comes down to democracy and making people accountable for their actions.
Okay.
Regarding the tactical voting, no. Don't vote tactically. Vote for who you believe in. If everybody votes tactically, then you end up with safe seats. People vote Labour to keep the Tories out. People vote Tory to keep the Labour guys out. Everybody votes. Vote for who you believe in. If you want to vote UKIP, vote UKIP. Don't vote Conservative. Don't vote Conservative to keep Mark out, and don't vote Labour to keep Iain out. Vote for the party that you believe in. Tactical voting leads to safe seats, and I think safe seats are very, very bad for democracy.
On the question of electoral reform, and I've made my view clear, and for 20 years I've supported electoral reform of some form, and Labour did, in fact, in the last election, we did support as a party the alternative vote. It wasn't my preferred option, but we went for that, and obviously in the referendum that's what we supported, along in fact with the SNP, the Lib Dems, UKIP as well, admittedly on the outside, as you point out, against the Conservatives, who I think were against the winners. And to be fair, they were actually winners by a very large majority, though I must say that Edinburgh North and Leith of Westminster seat was one of the about 10 in the country where the majority voted in favour of AV, which shows a great deal of discernment in the elections of this constituency. In terms of the issue of coalitions and ruling out things, I mean, there is. Of course, it's right for people to ask these questions, but equally, it's very difficult to predict what will actually happen after the election. It'll depend upon what the balance of votes and MPs is going to be. I mean, my view is that, I have no problem in principle having coalitions with the SNP. For example, there's been one in Edinburgh Council at local level for the last couple of years, which I actually supported, and I was a leader of a minority Labour administrator SNP supporter of a council a while ago. But I think there is an issue. I mean, obviously, there is a fundamental difference between the SNP and the Labour Party on the constitutional issue. I mean, we can't get away from that. And I think trying to put together coalitions which are there just to, form a majority and, get a traditional form of government, I think is something which is liable to go wrong, which is why both, I think, the Labour Party and the SNP have ruled out coalitions and formal deals. And I think, actually, obviously, I want to see a Labour majority. I want to obviously be elected as Labour MP. I want to be part of a majority Labour government. And the opinion polls are going in the direction that is very much a real possibility, particularly if people like me are re-elected. But if we don't, then we can learn perhaps from the lessons of the SNP minority government, who I think precisely because for 4 years they had to get consensus on issues across the Parliament, can actually do things in that way, which is perhaps a better way than trying to force together artificial coalitions because you have to have a majority of a single vote. So I think it's a different kind of politics we need to go for. But as I said, I would prefer to have, under the present system, a majority Labour government. But having said that, I'd also like to see a proportional system, which would probably mean that no party would have majorities most of the time, and that is part of the democratic result of an electoral reform system.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was just sort of saying I haven't paid anybody to talk about electoral reform or anything. It's just come up. But yes, yay.
Well, about... Right, about AV. Well, you may think it was a bad compromise, but it was the best that we could get under the circumstances. And it was going to be a first step. A step toward electoral reform, which I wish had been supported, because it wouldn't have ended there. It would have set us on the road to further electoral reform down the line. And I still think electoral reform is required. As far as tactical voting is concerned, I don't know. Well, I think what we must look at is not just about parties or tactical voting. What kind of parliament do we want? What kind of people do we want represented there? There just are not enough women. There just are not enough minorities. We need diversity of every kind, a diversity of parties, diversity of individuals, diversity of backgrounds. I want people who are on welfare in Parliament. I want people from professional backgrounds in Parliament, people from every walk of life in Parliament. And too often we have the professional politicians, people going straight from university into political jobs and then into Parliament. And I think that is a problem. You look at each of your candidates everywhere. See who best represents you. And if they are the right person for the job, whatever party they are, unless, of course, you have to sell your soul to the devil, whatever party they are, go right ahead and vote for them. And as far as the college, I must, I think one thing that people will appreciate about politicians is some honesty. And I'm going to be honest here, and I'm going to say I don't know much about this. Now, what I will request you to do is to email me the question, and I'll provide you the email address, the correct one. And I will get in touch with the Scottish parliamentary team, with the Lib Dems, as well as the Lib Dem Edinburgh councillors, and get an answer for you.
Yep.
Please. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice. It's nice when you kind of find yourself agreeing with people in the panel. That really happens with Lib Dems and me. So I'll address the tactical voting question first off. It's pretty clear to me that if you always vote for something you don't want, then you will always end up with something you don't want. And if you kind of want the SNP, but you actually really want Green, then vote Green. Don't kind of vote SNP. But I do understand. We are facing a political reality here where we are in a first past the post system, and I completely understand. I hear it on the doorsteps every day, people saying, vote for you next year. People say that every year. Which is nice that the intention is there. I appreciate that. I really do. I agree with Bruce that it's a really tricky time, but really we have to vote for what you believe in. I think it's really interesting to think about why people are voting SNP in this election, though, and where that intention is coming from. I think we need to recognise that. I think, firstly, there's this kind of resolve after the referendum to keep that spirit going. We do that too. We also voted yes. I think there's a desire to maybe teach the Labour Party a lesson about their sense of entitlement to power. I think we could probably do that too. And I think that we could maybe help the SNP to stop developing that sense of entitlement that I think is there, not there now, absolutely. I don't think that exists in the party just now. But I think if you have an entirely yellow Scotland, looking at the map after the 7th of May, what that says about our politics is that then you expect the SNP to always win. And I think that builds a sense of entitlement to power. So I think there's, as we've said, I think there's a real case for diversity in politics and not just going with the sort of bigger majority parties. I think vote for what you believe in is the fundamental thing. Really quickly on the colleges, I think it's pretty abhorrent that students have not been consulted. This has been done without them. I think student power is really effective. I was student president of my own student union for a couple of terms, and we managed to change things by not turning up to lessons, by sometimes not paying our fees. Those things can be quite powerful. But in FE, in further education, students are so often disempowered to start with. We're talking about the people who maybe cannot get into university, who are maybe returning to education, quite often some of the poorest, most disadvantaged people in society in the first place. For them to be further disempowered is absolutely abhorrent. And I think actually there's a real case for kind of rising up there. And I think further support for FE student unions, for the kind of resourcing and staff support there is really important to help students to kind of take that step towards activism. So again, if there's anything I can do to help, I'm very happy to. I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers, though.
On colleges, it's yours is not the only college suffering this. The whole college sector has faced massive cuts. Terrible lack of places, cuts in places there as SNP prioritise universities, and kids that can get to university, well, that's great, they're doing very well, and the kids that can't get to university or need the college is at bridge. Or there was a great programme on the radio today I was listening to, families of folk with Down syndrome sitting saying again just how hard it is for folks to get into college now and their kids to get into college under this government. As governments make choices, SNP very much have chosen universities there, and colleges are bearing the brunt of that. I do wonder, Deirdre says, speaking to the folks from Duncan Place, that she hears there are no problems. I've heard she speaks to folks in the voluntary sector, and there are no...
I was just saying that the person who replied to me said, there's not a problem.
I wonder I wonder if anyone's ever come back to the SNP and said, oh, there's a problem, and do you know what it is? It's... this stuff comes up there. Tactical voting. Vote for who you want. Okay, listen, the Greens and SNP are very, very, very different parties. Have a read of the Green Manifesto. It is. Honestly, have have a read of their manifestos. I think Sarah's given up too early. Do you know, you're campaigning hard to get winning the south of Scotland in 2016. Do you know, there's still the election coming up to go. Vote for the party you want to. Do you know, I get it. In 2010, I went round some of the areas in North Leith, and they said, Iain, we'd love to vote Tory, but this time we're voting Lib Dem is best placed to stop Labour. And then you go back to these doors this year and they say, Iain, we'd love to vote Tory, this time we're voting Labour to stop the SNP. Do you know, apart from the one who said they're going to vote SNP because Labour told them that was the best way, if you voted SNP you were going to end up with Cameron, and they want Cameron, so they think that. Do you know, you can be too clever by half, okay? Folks can be too clever by half. If you vote for who you want, you really might get who you want. So I would urge you to do that. And I don't understand fully the logic of saying you're going to vote SNP to punish Labour when the SNP have said very much that they're going to put Labour into power regardless, unless you judge them on their actions rather than their words. And you go, well, in 79 the SNP brought down the Labour government and brought in Thatcher, which was fantastic, or in 2007.
Okay, I'm going to draw this to a close anyway because it's 9:17. Hello, cameraman.
I have two questions from home.
Oh, okay. Right, very quickly, because we did promise them 2 minutes to wrap up, and I do want to be done by 9:30. But go.
It's a 50-50 gender balance. James asks, what is each candidate's position on the call or online petition for an independent public inquiry into the Edinburgh Council's handling of the statutory notice poverty conservation scandals through cover-up?
Thanks, James.
And Iona asks, I would be interested to hear thoughts from all candidates on the subjects of affordable childcare and housing in the area.
Oh, crikey. We're never going to get all of this in. Okay, very, very quickly. 50-50, for or against?
For 50-50.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you clarify?
Parliament, gender balance in Parliament.
Yes.
Yes, okay, Giddo.
I'm more interested in merit, to be fair.
Thank you.
And my party demonstrates it very clearly. Do you know, Margaret Thatcher, Annabel Goldie, Ruth Davidson? Do you know, there is no bar to achievement in my party.
This is like a whole conversation that we could have for about 3 hours, and also it's going to get me too angry to even go to bed by midnight, so let's not do that. Childcare. How to rush through these things. This is really difficult. I feel like we're not giving them the attention they deserve. I think the question about Edinburgh, I think probably let's see if we can all respond to that on Twitter to James. He's asked that question on Twitter because obviously that's quite a local council issue rather than a general election issue. Childcare.
Bairns, not bombs. Sorry. You know, why are we spending £100 billion potentially over 35 years on Trident, renewal of Trident? We could be putting it into childcare services, and that's certainly one of the SNP's flagship policies.
Bairns.
Better childcare.
Bairns, not bridges. We don't need the Forth Road Bridge replacement. And that money, £2 billion, could have been spent on stopping the cuts in my son's childcare playgroups in Kirkliston. But that's a local issue.
Anyone else very quickly?
Whatever your priorities are, and you know, I live here, I use the same services you do, I value the same services folks do. A sound economy underpins all of that. Okay, so if we've got an economy that's growing, that's creating jobs, that's creating wealth, that's not creating wealth to service debt, then we can have the services we want.
Okay, anyone else quickly on childcare?
On childcare, this is an issue which Labour's Deputy Leader of Scotland, Kezia Dugdale, has been campaigning very actively on, and we will be putting forward policies over the next couple of weeks at the UK level, and it'll also be a major element which we'll be putting forward in the Scottish Parliament next year. On the question of bairns, not bombs, can I just emphasise I'm personally against the renewal of Trident, have always voted that way, and if elected will also always do so. I do so not just for financial reasons, but because I think it's financially wrong, ethically wrong, morally wrong, and strategically wrong as well. And just on the question gender balance, can I mention that the Labour Party was the first party to have women-only shortlists. At the time, everyone else was against it, but just as the minimum wage, everyone else seems to be in favour. Good example, Labour leading the way.
No, not the Tories.
Except UKIP, sorry.
And the Tories.
Most of our parties are in favour. A good example of Labour setting the lead in practice, something which we try to do.
Did you want to say something briefly, Sarah? Oh.
Thanks very much. Really quickly, yes, absolutely on gender balance. The Green Party has gender balance built into our constitution, so 40% of all winnable seats, of all seats, have to be women anyway. We're doing fairly well on that. I think 43% of our candidates this time around are women.
I think it's 38.
Oh, we're so close. We're so close. It's very difficult for Westminster and how we choose it. On childcare, absolutely, we need more affordable childcare. We're completely in favour of affordable childcare and a change to the way that we work and the way that we care, and actually having something like a citizen's income, which is Green Party policy, which gives everyone a basic income, which means that we can share care and have to do less full-time work just to pay for your childcare. So I think a whole shift in how we think about care and who does caring is part of Green Party policies. And yes, I'll absolutely pick up on the Edinburgh City Council issues on Twitter.
Okay, I'm really sorry, and I know that we haven't all sort of mentioned everything, and there are still some questions, and probably the people at home aren't quite satisfied with those responses. But I did want to, as promised, give the candidates 2 minutes each, and you really have to stick to time because we're going to go over by 4 minutes anyway, to just sum up, and I guess your pithy election demands to everybody. Brief, maybe, is a better word than pithy. Go.
Pramod, I disagree about £10 an hour. That's what we need to boost the economy because it's stagnating and wages are just not following inflation. There's plenty money in this country. It will cost money to restore the benefit cuts that have been made, but it's in the wrong hands. And that's what politics is, for the gentleman that asked earlier. It's about progressive redistribution of wealth to make it fairer. And that's what we want to see. And I really hope that you'll think hard about these issues and vote for the one party that is a socialist party. And we want purple jobs, we want green jobs, and that's our appeal. Please support us.
Well under a minute. Brilliant. Deirdre.
Okay. All right.
I think yes.
I think so, yeah.
Because
so
I forgot to do it in order.
Number, yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think this is a really exciting opportunity. For the first time, we have a Westminster election that we can actually make a difference. Our vote will make a difference down there. And I think so many of us were just heartbroken after the referendum. But our eyes were really open by that time, and we are never going to go back to where we were before. I think we expect a lot more from our politics and from our politicians now, and that's absolutely right. I think we have the opportunity here to make this country, and in fact the whole of the UK, a better place to live in. I believe before the referendum, and I still believe now, that the best thing for Scotland will be to take control of all of its own affairs. But I accept there are many who disagreed with that. However, as I say, I feel that there is genuinely an appetite for change across the country, and a large group of SNP MPs heading down to Westminster is the way that I believe that we can make that change happen for us. I think that potential is really exhilarating in some ways, and I think that we will use that opportunity wisely, and we will be constructive in whatever we do. And yes, I accept absolutely Mark's point. It's not a formal coalition, but I think, without doubt, the possibility for confidence and supply is there, some sort of confidence and supply actions. And I think, look at the SNP minority government and how they dealt with that situation. I think they did well, and I think it was a sort of a grown-up time in politics for this country. They had to negotiate with other parties to get their, and the Greens and the Liberal. I mean, this was done every year to get the budget through, and I think that was, I get sick of all the mudslinging and, all of this nonsense between politicians. I would like to see us really doing much more grown-up politics where we actually act on behalf of the people of this country and try to do the best by them.
Brilliant!
Grown-up politics sounds pretty good to me. I have no objection to that. We have to be adults. This is a time where we have, at the moment, a 4- or 5-way split in the polls. Any two parties could win, and no single party is likely to get a majority. I think it's not time for people to stand up and make our politicians and our officials accountable. I want to know who blew an extra £1 billion on an aircraft carrier. That could have been used to house people. That could have been used for childcare. Every time a government project goes over budget, no one's accountable. We have a chance to make ourselves responsible and to hold these people to account today. On May the 7th, if you vote UKIP, we'll get us out of the EU, which gets rid of one set of unaccountable bureaucrats and officials, and hopefully we can turn the rest of our officials back on service rather than rule.
Brilliant. Also, only just over a minute. We're doing very well, people. I can see you're all keen to get home. Mark.
We need change. We need change in Scotland. We need change in the UK. We need change internationally as well. And we need changes socially, politically, and economically. And the best way of getting that change is a progressive Labour government. And the best way of getting that is to vote for Labour to get that progressive Labour government in the UK elections. And if the Labour government needs encouragement in going in the right way, I'll certainly do my best to encourage it to go in a progressive way. But we have a progressive range of policies. I've certainly tried to work hard as a local MP over the years, take up local issues, take up national issues in Westminster as well. And if you re-elect me, I will continue to do that to the best of my ability. Thank you. 40 seconds.
We may have lost the AV referendum, but I think I can see what it was trying to, pretty much, the outcome that it was looking for was that there would no longer be a safe seat, was that there would be diversity in Parliament. And now, thanks to all the different parties that are here, there's a real chance of that. There's a real chance that there won't be safe seats anymore and that there are many players in Westminster. Also, with this coalition, one thing has become very clear. The era of single-party majority governments is dead. And now, from now on, every party, every seat, parties will have to come together to form coalitions. That is the future. Whether they form formal coalitions or whether they form other agreements, every policy will now have to be fully debated. And for once, I think at least in 2015, I see that the power is in the hand of the voter. Think about it. Use it wisely.
Thank you very much. We're doing exceptionally well here. That was 50 seconds.
Amazing.
Go.
I'll try and stick to time. There we go. I just wanted to say a little bit about what a Green vote means. There's no Green MPs in Scotland right now. There is one Green MP in the whole of the UK, that's Caroline Lucas. I think you can look at what Caroline Lucas has achieved in her 5 years in Parliament. It's pretty immense. She's brought forward a bill to renationalise the railways already. She has been dragging that Parliament, kicking and screaming to the left. And I think that's the power of even just one Green MP in Parliament. Think what that could mean in Scotland. I think that could be an incredibly powerful thing. But if you believe in equality and not poverty, and you want to see a £10 minimum wage enacted and an end to cruel benefit cuts, then vote Green. If you want to see public services in public hands, and the railways back in public hands, and fighting TTIP and things that would actually privatise and build in privatisation into our democracy, then vote Green. And if you want to see power handed to our communities, not just to the Parliament, but out into local authorities and into communities, into our hands, then vote Green. That's all there is to it, folks. Thanks very much.
Thank you much. Yes, also coming in at a minute, Iain.
Thank you. The election's a very, very clear choice, and the Conservatives have a very clear offering in this election, which is to absolutely carry on the work of fixing the economy, growing the economy, creating jobs and creating opportunities for us all. And that involves getting the country to be running at a surplus. So not racking up debt for our grandchildren, not racking up debt to be servicing debt payments so that we can be investing in the services that we all need and we all value. So it is, if you want a government that's growing the economy and running at a surplus as opposed to a deficit, that is very much our offer, because that does underpin every service and every priority that we would all have, the diverse bunch of people that we are here in Leith.
Thank you very much. Also under a minute. Congratulations. So, right. I'm going to draw things to a close. I would like to say thank you all very, very much for coming and staying in this quite stuffy room with all the people in it. Thank you for people watching online. I'm really sorry we didn't get to everybody's questions, and that the questions from people watching were dealt with quite quickly. I would encourage you to actually actively engage with your candidates. I think they're all on Twitter. Except for, but I imagine you can find him in other ways. Please, but do search them out. I would encourage you to please go and talk to your candidates. That's what they're there for. This is their job interview, and you are their employers. So thank you for coming, and thank you for the candidates, and thank you all for staying very polite, because that makes me happy. Oh, and if you've enjoyed your evening, please do bear in mind that this has been all set up by the area C Coffeehouse, and if you want them to get more money to do more exciting events, There'll be a bucket on the way out, and you can throw your contribution in. I'm not getting paid, though.